Thank you, Jerome. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, the light is hitting you in a way where it just has a halo around you. I don't know if the rest of you can see it. You look like Jesus sitting up there. Jesus looking down on me. It's good to have you here. I've got a question for you. Why was the dolphin sad? Because its life had no purpose. God! Whoa! Wait a minute. It wasn't that bad, was it? Well, I welcome you. And I want everybody to remember that collective response. Freeze that in your memory because we're going to come back to it in a little bit. So just remember the moans and the groans, the shaking of the head, the hissing, and the booing. Well, we continue on with our 2012 series, The Year of Great Transformation, as it ties in with the Mayan calendar, which is 5,000 years old. And the prediction there says that December 21st, or therein, it's going to be a time of great revealing. Well, the question on everybody's mind is the revealing of what? We know that we're in the midst of a transformation right now. We do not live in the world that we grew up in. We don't live in the same world that we lived in 20 years ago. Everything is changing at an incredibly fast speed. So we know that we need to have a transformation in consciousness if we're going to continue to be able to maintain any semblance of peace of mind and well-being as we go forward. And even the children these days are getting smarter. The old methods of teaching, such as writing on a blackboard and lecturing, are just too mundane and slow for today's students, and the schools can't advance their teaching methods fast enough. The kids are almost like a new evolution of humanity. They're coming up, they're smarter than we were at that age, they're quicker, they know more things, plus I think they have a sincerity and a purity that is going to lead us into the next generation of world peace and even more. When I was in high school, 3 buddies and myself thought it would be great fun to steal Ed Bernard's billy goat and let it loose in the school hallways. We did that. It was great fun. We never got caught. The high school kids today are much, much smarter. I read this week, 3 high schoolers in Iowa let 3 goats loose in the high school hallways. They shoot them in different directions. They numbered the goats, painted on the side of the goats, 1, 2, and 4. You're way ahead of me. The article said the school administration spent all day looking for goat number 3 and never could find it. That's genius. We never would have thought of that when I was in high school. But every one of us in here can notice that throughout our entire lifetime, things have gotten faster. Cars, planes, trains, all going faster and faster and faster. Cooking is faster with microwave ovens. We have fast food. We have 1-hour everything from eyeglass prescriptions to dry cleaning. It's just an incredible increase of speed with everything. Internet providers advertise fast, faster, fastest. They have names like Roadrunner and Power Thrust and what's the Windstream or something like that. Everybody wants to be the fastest thing going. And that is good, but it does take its toll because each and every one of us is expected to keep up. If you have children, you know how it is with all the soccer games and the other extracurricular activities and racing here and racing there. We have job demands. Everything is moving faster. And if we don't have some sort of a shift in consciousness, it leads to stress, nervousness, anxiety, and life diminishes in its value. So we're at a point where we either have to break through to a new way of looking at life, to a new reality, or break down under the system that we're presently in. And that's what this series is all about. Mayan calendar or no Mayan calendar, this is about what type of a frame of mind, what type of a outlook do we need going forward. So if you thought that you could be happier, if you thought that you should feel better physically, If you thought that you'd like to have more control over creating your life rather than having it created for you, you can do that. There's no doubt about it. You don't have to get anything. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to become something. It does take a shift in consciousness. And that is what we're going to talk about this morning. So this brings us around to you. How is your life? What is the state of your existence? If it's good, could it be better? If it's not so good, could it be? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. So for a moment, I'd like to talk about you, and this might seem a little biological, it might seem a little scientific, but at the end it has a very important point. You came into existence as a single strand of DNA. Microscopically small, tiny, invisible to the eye, one strand of DNA, that was you. But that DNA had consciousness. It knew exactly what to do from the very beginning. And that DNA doubled itself 50 times. And when it was through, you had become a commune for 70 trillion cells. You'd become a community of 70 trillion cells, every single cell dedicated to working for you. The cells inherited the consciousness of the first single strand of DNA. They inherited the nature of the first single strand of DNA, and their total commitment is for your well-being. Now, the nature of cells is very, very interesting. Cells have no self-interest. They are not self-centered. Cells cooperate with all other cells. Cells communicate with other cells, and if another cell needs something, it provides it, or if it needs something, it is provided for. The cells have one goal, and that is a higher purpose in mind. Once again, they are not self-centered. That higher purpose is your well-being. So the point of all this is, if you are a commune for 70 trillion cells, and if those cells have consciousness and a nature, and if that consciousness and a nature is to live in a peaceful way, cooperate with all others, to not be self-centered or self-interest, to be flexible and not rigid, then that must be your nature as well. Because you take the 70 trillion cells away and there is no you. So what I am suggesting is, because of the lifestyle that we're living, because of the fast pace, because of many of the thoughts, feelings, and attitudes and perceptions that have been pressed upon us, we have been kind of taken out of our natural being. We've wandered away from our nature, and that is why life gets very difficult at sometimes. So the great transformation that is upon us is to reclaim that nature and move back into the way of being that we were originally born into, and the way that is the most natural for us to live. You know, as a baby born into this world, you didn't have any low self-esteem, you didn't have any jealousy, you didn't have any resentments, you didn't have any anger. All those things were learned as you went along. You were pure, you were whole, you opened to the world in every single moment. But then as we go along, we pick up thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and perceptions from other people around us, from society, from culture, from family. We get beliefs on this and beliefs on that, and we gather them together, and we take that to be our reality. Well, you have consciousness, and consciousness is not the same as the brain. The brain is like a radio, and consciousness is like the radio waves. When you tune in a radio to a certain station that has a certain program, you can do that. With the consciousness, you tune into a certain program that you claim as, this is how I see the world. And that program is set. Now, we call that program your circle of influence. And I'm just going to review this because we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. But your circle of influence are all the thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and perceptions that influence you. It tells you how to act, how to react, how to think, and how to feel. So you have 4 functions to your consciousness. There's a sensory function. Right now, my sensory function is through my senses, seeing and looking and perceiving everything that's around me. Then I have the thinking function. The thinking function comes back and tells me what all of this means to me. I sense everything, I think, what does it mean to me? And then I have the feeling function, which is I perceive everything around me. I think, what does this mean? How do I feel about it? Those three functions are all in the brain. And that's the way we live our ordinary daily lives. Now, because things have picked up with such speed, when we move into a new situation or circumstance, we don't take the time to stop and think, what am I perceiving here? What do I think about it? I wonder how I feel about that. We don't do that. What we do is we fall back on the thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and perceptions that are in the circle of influence that we've always used. Because it's easier that way. We think it's faster that way. We have to do that just to keep up. So if your life is not as good as it should be, if you're not feeling as well as you should, if you think that there's more to life than what you're experiencing, all that means is you need to change your program because you're seeing the world in a way that provides that kind of a life for you. Now, changing the program is not easy because thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and perceptions in your brain, are pretty stubborn. You've been using them for a long time. And if you start to change and see things differently, the ego pops up and says, wait a minute, that's not the way we see things. The ego doesn't want to be left out in the cold. It wants to know what is going on. So, I've told you an awful lot in the last 15 minutes. We'll just bring it down a notch. You have consciousness. Consciousness has 4 functions. You perceive what's going on in the world around you. You think about it and define it. You feel a certain way about the definition. That is the way you live your life. But there's a 4th function of consciousness. And that 4th function of consciousness is not in the brain. That 4th function of consciousness is in the heart. The heart has an energy, a power, a spirit that is 70 times greater than that in the brain. The heart is a seat of your intuition. Some call it the Christ mind, some call it the higher mind, some call it the universal mind. Whatever it is, it doesn't make any difference. But it's that which lies beyond knowledge, it lies beyond reasoning, it is not affected by your circle of influence. It's that wisdom that you came into this world with, it's that wisdom that was in the first DNA strand, it's a wisdom that was in all the 70 trillion cells that followed, it's that wisdom that's allowed you to exist and move through life without thinking. The heart is more than an organ that pumps blood. The very first sense of consciousness is in the heart. The very first cell that came into your body was a heart cell. The very first organ in your body was the heart. The heart has an energy that it emits. It's an electrocardiac or magnetic energy, and it can be detected up to 10 feet away. If you're in the presence of somebody that is very happy and loving and upbeat, you can actually feel that. As a matter of fact, my good friend David Westbrook, who's blind, says he can tell the character of people just by standing in their presence. He detects that energy that's coming forth from their heart. So the great transformation that we're about to move into is to shift our consciousness from what we've always known, from what we've always did, from what we've always had to be, or from what we've always thought we had to become, and shift that into the higher level of consciousness, the intuitive consciousness, that stands without judgment, it stands without jealousy, it stands without anger, it stands without resentment. It is just there, and from that point, bring that into the circle of influence and not do away with their thinking, feeling, and sensing, but balance it out so that we have a more compassionate, more caring, more feel-good about life within us. Now, a perfect example of this, shifting from head to the heart, took place in a state penitentiary in Louisiana. It's called Angola. Some of you might have read the article a while back. Angola sits on 18,000 acres. Its population is 5,000 prisoners. 50% of the prisoners are in for life sentences. 85% of the prisoners in Angola will die there. It's known as one of the roughest, toughest prisons in the country. It's one of the biggest prisons in the world. It conditions people to be rough and tough and mean just to survive. The gangs are rampant, killings are frequent. It was just a perfect system that wasn't working. So the warden there decided to start up a hospice team and train prisoners to care for other prisoners who were dying. They went through a training session, and all of a sudden you have these rough and tough conditioned men caring for other prisoners that are dying. And they would bathe them, they would clothe them, they would feed them, they would do their laundry. They would hold them in their arms. They were there when the prisoner took his last breath, and some of them cried when that happened. Now, this had a tremendous effect on the hospice volunteers, but it also had a tremendous effect on the prison itself. All of a sudden, danger started going down, safety started going up. A sense of edginess started going down, a sense of peace started going up. It completely transformed the prison in a way that discipline and other measures couldn't. My point is, what happened with those prisoners is they moved beyond that circle of influence that had collected over their lifetime, which is to stand up for yourself, be rough and tough, always look at your back. It's a hard world out there. I'm going to take what I want. I don't care about anybody else. It tapped into that higher mind, which is very compassionate and very caring and very loving. And they were released from the prison of the heart to be able to express feelings that many of them had probably never expressed before. That is the difference. During meditation today, we're going to go through a shift in consciousness where we're going to be in the mind, and then we're going to shift to the intuition, and it's a very simple practice that you can do on your own. Before we do that, this week I had a great experience. I was able to stand in the presence of a 6-year-old boy. Beautiful, beautiful child. He had shiny blonde hair that tumbled down curls over his forehead. His eyes were big, blue, and radiant. His skin was fair. He just had this sense of purity about him. You know how it is when you see a child? You know, you just love them because they aren't, well, not that we are, but they're not tainted yet. You know, they are just there. And so I'm standing in this kid's presence, and he tugs on my coat sleeve. And I look down, and he says, "Do you know why the dolphin was sad?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Because it had no purpose in its life." And then he laughed, showing a wide gap in a huge smiling face. Now, the difference between your response this time and your response the first time is in your head, you were thinking, you know, old men shouldn't be telling corny jokes at church. I know that's what you were thinking. But this time, you were captured by the image of the little boy, and he touched your heart. You shifted from your mind to the intuitive heart. And that's what it's all about. We're going to cover this as time goes on, but it does make an incredible difference in your life. And we have a lot of practices we can do where if we're starting to feel stressful or angry or something, we can immediately shift from that into the intuitive heart where there's a sense of calm and a sense of peace. So we're now moving to meditation. I invite you to make yourselves comfortable. The exercise we're going to do, or the practice, is on the front page of the bulletin. If you haven't read it, don't worry about it. I'll walk you through it. Take a moment to relax. Take a deep breath, slowly exhale. And as you do, just feel every muscle in your body becoming relaxed. If there's any tension in your forehead, your neck, your shoulders, so that to be released. Breathe in, pause at the top. Breathe out, pause at the bottom. Just do that for a moment or two. Breathe in, pause. Breathe out, pause. I'd like you to draw to mind some situation or circumstance in your life that is uncomfortable. It might be a disturbing situation, something that angers you, something you have great fear or trepidation about. It could be a financial matter, it could be a relationship, it could be your job, it could be something with a loved one. But just put your attention on that situation. I'd like you to focus your attention to the area around your heart, that area in the center of your chest. And as you breathe in, feel as if the breath is coming in and out through that heart area. As you inhale, you feel as if your breath is flowing through the heart. And as you exhale, you feel it leaving through this area. Breathe slowly and casually, a little deeper than normal. Continue breathing with ease until you find a natural inner rhythm. It feels good to you. As you maintain this heart focus and heart breathing, recall a positive feeling that you've had. A time when you felt really good inside. You might have been in the midst of a loving person, perhaps laughing with friends, relaxing in nature, whatever it might be. One of those times in your life that was just perfect. It goes without definition. It goes without reasoning. It's just pure feeling. Take your right hand and place it over your heart on the left side. And as you continue to focus on that beautiful time in the past, you say thank you. All is well. I have a beautiful life, and I live in a beautiful world. We now move into the silent part of this meditation. We continue to reflect on those beautiful memories, allow the emotions to run free, and know that they are a great part of our lives. A great part of our lives. In the silence.